bombshell just when you thought you would not hear any more about Russiagate. Dun, dun, dun. It appears that Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger have dropped a bombshell in reference to Russiagate. This is new information, and how Barack Obama may have also been involved along with the CIA. It appears, surprise, surprise, we have been lied to again. Let's get into this. I have a couple of clips to show as well. Michael Schellenberger said the CIA had foreign allies spy on Trump team, triggering Russia collusion hoax, sources say. The U.S. intelligence community targeted 26 Trump advisors for foreign spy agencies to reverse target and bump. And we'll get into a little bit of what Michael says here, right here. Until now, the official story has been that the FBI's investigation began after Australian intelligence officials told U.S. officials that a Trump aide had boasted to an Australian diplomat that Russia had damning material about Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. So, everybody remember that? We all remember that. That's what we were told. In truth, the U.S. intelligence community asked the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance to surveillance Trump's associates and share the intelligence they acquired with U.S. agencies. Now, this says is coming from sources close to the House of Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence investigation. The Five Eyes nations are the U.S., UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. After Public and Racket had been told that President Barack Obama's CIA Director John Brennan had identified 26 Trump associates for the Five Eyes to target, a source confirmed that the intelligence community had identified them as people to bump or make contact with or manipulate. They were targets of our own IC and law enforcement, targets for collection and misinformation. Unknown details about the FBI's investigation of the Trump campaign and raw intelligence related to the IC surveillance of the Trump campaign are in a 10-inch binder that Trump ordered to be declassified at the very end of his term. So all of this rests on that 10-inch binder, which is somewhere, probably at Mar-a-Lago. I'm pretty sure they're going to be searching for that. If the top secret documents exist proving these charges, they are potentially proof that multiple U.S. intelligence officials broke laws against spying and election interference. Let's get into the discussion. Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger were both on Fox News. They spoke to Jesse Waters. Now, for people come at me and say, oh, why weren't they on CNN? Why weren't they on MSNBC? I don't think MSNBC or CNN is going to invite them on for this discussion. No. Remember, those networks, they lean towards the Democratic Party. So obviously, they're not going to bring them on to talk about corrupt things that the Democratic Party has done. Just like Fox News wouldn't bring them on to talk about this if it was in reference to the Republican Party. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here.
In the 1950s, President Dwight Eisenhower announced that he was naming the first civilian director in the history of the CIA. His name was Allen Dulles, and Dulles had one order: eliminate communism. But under Dulles, the CIA morphed into Washington's most powerful agency, built up by a league of ruthless assassins, operating under the orders to protect capitalism from the Soviet menace. Dulles became power hungry. Just months into his term, Dulles green-lighted Operation PB Success, a coup to take out Guatemala's democratically elected leader, Jacobo Arbenz, and replace him with a military dictator. Why? To serve as a vanguard for corporate interests. You see, they needed to protect the profits of the United Fruit Company. They were under threat of having their land confiscated under the Arbenz administration. And the CIA has never shied away from government overthrow, from Iran to the Congo to South Vietnam. The CIA has never changed until recently, when they began interfering in American elections. And when it happened, it was called a conspiracy theory.
The biggest scandal was when they spied on my campaign. They spied on my campaign.
There's no real evidence of that.
Of course there is. It's all over the place. Leslie,
Sir,
they spied on my campaign and they got caught.
Can I say something? You know, this is 60 Minutes, and we can't put on things we can't verify.
You won't put it on because it's bad for Biden.
We can't put on things we...
Is Leslie Stahl going to come back and apologize for what she said in this interview? You don't even have to like Donald Trump. And honestly, let's look at this from a nonpartisan lens, because you don't have to like Donald Trump. What we're trying to focus on here is, what does the law say? And in reference to what happened here, was that correct? Was that the right thing to do? Obviously, no, this was not the right thing to do. Obviously, this is really messed up. This is really messed up. So don't look at this through a partisan lens. To that point, I feel that Leslie Stahl should have to come back and issue a retractment for this interview. And I'd say the same thing if it was Joe Biden sitting in that seat. We have to look at this from a different lens.
We can't verify.
Leslie, they spied on my campaign.
Well, we can't verify
It's been totally
that.
verified.
No.
It's been, just go down and get the papers. They spied on my campaign. They got caught.
Barack Obama said everything was done by the book.
I guarantee that there is no political influence in any investigation conducted by the Justice Department or the FBI, not just in this case, but in any case.
Now,
is Obama going to come back and retract that statement?
Obama isn't the first politician to lie and won't be the last. Last night, we brought you a bombshell report from journalists Michael Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi that allege Obama's CIA not only was involved in the Russia hoax, they started it.
The story, as you mentioned, was that, we were just informed by foreign intelligence about this. Our sources tell us a very different story, which is that this was initiated by the U.S. government. It came from within the U.S. government's intelligence community, including the CIA.
According to this report, Obama's CIA director, John Brennan, asked our English-speaking allies to target the Trump campaign.
So in other words, they started it. It came from inside the house, not outside the house. And all of them lied. Obama, Hillary, Leslie Stahl lied over and over and over again. None of them are held accountable for these lies.
Handing these foreign intelligence agencies a target list of 26 Trump associates. These 26 Trump associates were to be bumped, meaning they would be approached by assets, bumped into, and these interactions and relationships would be reported to the FBI as suspicious. These were people the CIA considered easy marks, like George Papadopoulos, 20-year-old. Foreign spies didn't discover evidence of Trump-Russia collusion and turn it over to the feds. Foreign spies were assigned by Obama's CIA to create a false impression of collusion, to trigger an FBI counterintelligence investigation.
So let's think about this for a second, guys. Like, I've heard some scandals throughout my lifetime, government scandals, but this is crazy. Like, Barack Obama assigned foreign intel to target Trump's campaign, whether you like Trump or not. Yo, this is wild. This is wild. And look at what just happened. So we covered the story about RFK Jr., the DNC coming after him, right? Who's to say they wouldn't do something like that to him or Jill or Cornell or Claudia or anybody else that they did not pick? Anyone else they didn't handpick? This is why it's problematic. So if you're one of those people where you're like, I can't stand Trump, so we don't need to defend what happened here. No, this is not about that. Forget the Trump of the Trump. Forget that it's Donald Trump and just focus on what was done, because they could do that to anyone. Anyone.
Obama's CIA worked with Hillary's foreign agents in London to hatch the hoax, which led to the FBI investigation, the illegal wiretapping, the Mike Flynn sting, and then when Trump caught wind of it, the Comey firing. And then Comey leaks the memos which triggered the Mueller investigation. Now, the Mueller investigation was designed to cover up for Obama and Hillary and tee up impeachment. It failed on impeachment, but the cover-up worked. Until now. New reporting by Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger revealed that House investigators had discovered the root causes, but their investigation and all of their documents were confined to secure rooms in Langley. And when Trump was leaving office in those hectic final days, he attempted to declassify this material, which started a battle between former CIA Director Gina Haspel, the Department of Justice, and the National Archives. The report says someone may have taken this binder of material exposing the entire intelligence community out of Langley. And it may have been what the FBI was looking for when they raided Mar-a-Lago.
So this explains a lot, doesn't it? Doesn't this explain a lot? Remember those classified, those documents that Trump had at Mar-a-Lago? Remember when the FBI showed up and they raided Mar-a-Lago? What it appears, obviously, they did not find that binder. So that binder is somewhere. I don't know if it's still at Mar-a-Lago, but it's somewhere out there, and somebody knows where it is.
Others say that's not true, but the point remains that the Obama-Biden White House, their CIA and FBI director, launched an illegal preemptive war against democracy, got caught, and have been covering it up for 8 years. Schellenberger and Taibbi also say redacted FOIA documents suggest that Biden has been conspiring against Donald Trump with the intelligence community to prosecute the former president in federal court, which would be an impeachable offense. Matt Taibbi is the Racket News editor-in-chief and Griftopia author. So this is great reporting. It's hard to verify because, you know, we were told that this special counsel, Durham, was going to get to the bottom of it. Are you saying he missed this?
We were told that the scope of the Durham investigation was limited to a few areas and that he wasn't looking at this particular direction.
Oh, pause there, ladies and gentlemen. So even that Durham report, that long Durham report, what was over like 300 pages? Even that long ass report was only limited to certain areas. And why was he limited to only certain areas? Why not give him access to all? And remember, guys, I don't know if everyone remember Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger, they were part of the Twitter files. So they testified before Congress. So they know how to do their research.
The information that we have, the investigation that was conducted by the House Permanent Select Committee on Investigations of Intelligence, what they found was a broad political espionage campaign, and there were two main conclusions that are at the center of our reports. One is that at least 26 Trump aides and associates were improperly and without predication placed under surveillance in the election year of 2016. And the other one is that these same folks cooked the intelligence for the January 6, 2017 intelligence community assessment, saying that Russia conducted an influence campaign to help Donald Trump. It's a WMD style story. They suppressed dissenting opinions and created a false narrative.
So there's a lot of debate over this binder. Is there a binder? What's in the binder? Is it redacted? Who has it? Where is it? Is that why they conducted the raid? What's going on with these materials?
Well, it's a difficult story because we heard multiple versions of what the binder is, how many binders there are. We heard there are as many as 3. But we do know a couple of concrete things. We know that only a share of the HIPSI investigation ever got out. Of course, people are aware of the Nunes memo, which led to the investigation of abuses of FISA. We know that there was a report done into the origins of that intelligence community assessment, which supposedly never left a vault on the grounds of Langley. That's like a 17 to 20 page report that was confirmed by multiple sources. Apart from that, we were told there are numerous other investigative materials that may or may not be these binders that stories are referring to. But we know that there's a lot of stuff that didn't get out, that there was that there were thousands of hours of investigation and their conclusions have not yet been declassified. Mm-hmm.
Oh, this would just be another reason why they want to do everything they can to prevent Donald Trump from returning to the White House, because he'll blow the lid off of that. He tried to, wasn't able to at the very end, but caught him most of the time. I am interested in your reporting.
Want to just say something here. Basically, Donald Trump is like, have you guys ever had a friend that has no filter? Everybody has like that one friend, or I think everyone does. Everyone's had like that one friend that has no filter and they just say whatever comes to their mind and they don't think, oh, this might offend people, or, oh, maybe this is not the right time and place to say this. This is the sort of thing that I'm going to say, right? Or you may actually, sometimes grandparents are like that because, my grandmother told me like as she got older, she cared less about what people thought. So she would just say whatever was on her mind, right? So the thing with Trump as a politician is that Trump said the quiet part out loud. So some of the things that Donald Trump said, it's not like you didn't have Democrat politicians who thought some of those same things, not everything, but thought some of those same things, or other Republican politicians who also felt that same way. The difference was they didn't say it out loud. Donald Trump said these things out loud. And so it almost feels like, and not just because of what happened on January 6th, it almost feels like they want to punish Donald Trump for basically just blowing the lid on so many things, for saying things out loud that are like, no, you're not really supposed to say that. Some of the comments that he made too about other countries, I did not agree with those comments. At the same time, I'm pretty sure he wasn't the only one who had made those kind of comments. They just made those comments behind closed doors. He made these comments in public. So I think that was part of the problem. And they're like, no, we cannot have this guy in. He's telling too much shit. He's talking too much. We got to get this guy out of here. But this is very telling because Obama was the one who was very confident in Hillary Clinton as a candidate. Remember this? Hillary, it's your turn next. I'm passing the mantle to you. I'm passing it on. If Obama was that confident in Hillary Clinton as a candidate and her campaign for president, why would they feel the need to even do this? Why would they feel the need to even try to target and spy on Donald Trump's campaign and his staff? If they knew, you know why? Because I think deep down, Barack Obama knew that she wasn't a strong candidate. I think deep down, he knew that a lot of people that were in like the Rust Belt in particular, a lot of people working class, like in those towns that used to be mill towns, or some of them were the old factory towns. He knew that a lot of those people probably would vote for Donald Trump, even though some of them had voted for him. And how did he know that? Because he didn't fulfill the promises that he made to those communities when he campaigned in those towns. And then 2, you have to think about the jobs that were removed from those towns as well under his administration and under Bill Clinton's administration. So what this tells you is that all along, Barack Obama knew that Hillary was not a strong candidate.
That there is, I guess, heavily redacted FOIA documents that suggest that Joe Biden has been collaborating with the intelligence community to prosecute these federal cases against Donald Trump. And we'll see how that shakes out. Matt, great reporting to you and Schellenberger. I suggest everybody go to your website, your Substack, and read it for yourself. Thanks again.
You're really going to have to put bubble wrap around Matt Taibbi now. And then I want to take you back to this conversation that Obama had about Russiagate. I don't want you to forget about this because, see, I always like to go back and see what was said. Now, this was 7 years ago. Barack Obama responds about Russian cyber attacks. So listen to this, guys. Listen to this, knowing what you know now.
There's another issue going forward. Is it necessary for the security of the United States that Russia pay some price for doing this? If, as you said, they did it.
I think there is no doubt that when any foreign government tries to impact the integrity of our elections, that we need to take action, and we will at a time and place of our own choosing. Some of it may be explicit and publicized, some of it may not be. But Mr. Putin is well aware of my feelings about this because I spoke to him directly about it. And there is among the big powers, there has been a traditional understanding of that everybody's trying to gather intelligence on everybody else. It's no secret that Russian intelligence officers or Chinese or, for that matter, Israeli or British or other intelligence agencies, that their job is to get insight into the workings of other countries that they're not reading in the newspapers every day.
And at the same time, just think about this. Remember the date. This was 7 years ago. And at the same time, he and the CIA under his administration, they were trying to gather intelligence on Donald Trump as he was having this interview. This is wild.
There's a difference between that and the kind of malicious cyber attacks that steal trade secrets or engage in industrial espionage, something that we've seen the Chinese do. And there's a difference between that and activating intelligence in a way that's designed to influence elections. So we have been working hard to make sure that what we do is proportional, that what we do is meaningful.
You guys see this? So in a way, he's not even, look, eye contact, ladies and gentlemen. Let's look at the body language. He's looking down at the floor when he's having this conversation with the interviewer. You guys notice this? He's looking down when he's making these statements. So in a way, it's like when he's saying we tried to do everything that we could to make sure, yeah, now you know what else they tried to do. Like it wasn't even just, like in a way, he was kind of giving himself away, maybe in a subtle way. But just look at this.
One of the things that we're going to have to do over the next decade is to ultimately arrive at some rules of what is a new game. And that is the way in which traditional propaganda and traditional covert influence efforts are being turbocharged by the internet. And
here it is, guys. Here it is. What did I tell you guys? All this was connected. Obama making these statements, and he's made these statements before recently as well, making these statements like we got to be careful about what's on the internet. The Democratic Party being the ones to push Twitter executives to censor certain information on Twitter and also Facebook. This was all connected, all of it. Russiagate, the censorship. And what they do is they refer to it as, oh, we got to make sure that there's no misinformation that is out there. But a lot of times what they refer to as misinformation is actually the correct information. They just don't want you to know it. They don't want you to know what they're doing.
By the cyber world. And so the whole issue of cybersecurity and how we play defense, how we think about offense, and how we avoid an escalation of a major cyber war.
One of the ways that they prevent the defense, how they do defense and offense, was the censorship. That was one of the ways to do both.
Or a cyber arms race is something that some of our smartest folks in government and in the private sector are spending a lot of time thinking about, because there is an asymmetry here. We are more digitalized. Our economy is more advanced. It's much wealthier. And it means that we have certain vulnerabilities that some of our adversaries don't have. This is actually a good example of where, in addition to whatever actions that we take bilaterally against Russia, we've got to spend some time working at an international level to start instituting some norms, the same way we did with things like nuclear weapons, because ultimately we can have a situation where everybody's worse off. That's what we did with China when we were seeing repeated hacking primarily for industrial espionage purposes, commercial purposes. They were stealing, technology and ideas. And I had a very blunt conversation with President Xi saying, if you don't stop it, here's what we are going to do. But what we also did was we mobilized the G20 and the G7 and the United Nations to start adopting basic rules saying this is not something you do.
Pause for a second. I want to check something with you guys. First of all, it's one thing to steal technology. Some would argue that China is more advanced in reference to technology than we are in certain ways. But how do you steal ideas? Because my dad always said to me, an idea is just an idea unless you don't have a plan or strategy. So if someone tells you they have an idea, but they don't actually do anything with it, they don't come up with any type of strategy, and someone else says, you know what, I'm going to take that idea and I'm going to do something with it. How do you sit?
And that can make a difference over time.
If whatever response you take is not completed by January 20th, do you have any reason to have confidence that President Trump will continue it?
My view is that this is not a partisan issue. And part of what we should be doing is to try to take it out of election season and move it into governing season. The irony of all this, of course, is that for most of my presidency, there's been a pretty sizable wing of the Republican Party that has consistently criticized me for not being tough enough on Russia. Some of those folks during the campaign endorsed Donald Trump, despite the fact that a central tenet of his foreign policy was we shouldn't be so tough on Russia.
Well, is that why you initiated Russiagate? Because people said you weren't tough enough on Russia? Oh, boy.
And that kind of inconsistency, I think, makes it appear, at least, that their particular position on Russia on any given day depends on what's politically expedient. There was a poll that came out a couple of days ago that said that 37% of Republicans have a favorable view of Vladimir Putin. Now think about that. Over a third of Republican voters think Putin's a good guy. This is somebody, the former head of the KGB, who is responsible for crushing democracy in Russia, muzzling the press, throwing political dissidents in jail, countering American efforts to expand freedom at every turn, is currently making decisions that's leading to a slaughter in Syria.
Wasn't the U.S., some of those things that he said that Vladimir Putin was doing also applies to the United States government. That's the problem. That's the problem. Like, how can you talk about that? And you guys, in reference to throwing political people into jail, what about Julian Assange? So it just, who are you talking about? I just, it's just one of those things. It's like some of these things that they're accusing Russia of. We did some of these things. We really did some of these things. So this was very telling. I'm going to let him finish here. And then we'll go on.
And a big chunk of the Republican Party, which prided itself during the Reagan era and for decades that followed as being the bulwark against Russian influence, now suddenly is embracing him. And my point here is that it's very important that we do not let the inter-family argument between Americans, the domestic political differences between Democrats and Republicans, obscure the need for us to stand together, figure out what it is that the Russians are interested in doing in terms of influencing our democratic process.
You hear this? Okay, here comes the election stuff, influencing our democratic process. Here comes Russiagate.
And inoculating ourselves from it. And that requires us having a clear-eyed view about it. It requires us not to relitigate the election. It requires us not to point fingers. It requires us just to say, here's what happened. Let's be honest about it. And let's not use it as a political football, but let's figure out how we prevent this from happening in the future. Because
let that sit there. How to prevent it from happening in the future. So notice most of that interview, he's looking down when he's talking to this guy. Notice that, very telling, right? What was also interesting is that he said 37% of Republicans were favorable of Vladimir Putin. The way he said it was like 50%. He was talking about this as though, oh my God, you would have thought it was higher than that. What I would have been more concerned with at that particular time, towards the end of his presidency, is the fact that you had even more, a higher percentage that was favorable of you, Barack Obama. And you had a higher percentage of African Americans that were favorable of you, considering that Black wealth tanked under your presidency because of your economic policies. You were the one we should have been concerned about, not someone who doesn't run this country. You know, like Putin all the way over there, You were right here. So even to this day, it's still concerning to me when I see these polls of Obama's favorability. It's still shocking to me because I'm just like, and particularly under the African American community, I'm like, how can you think about the things that Obama did that actually hurt the Black community economically in your face? Hopefully, I have to double check, but hopefully Matt might be here tomorrow and we can go into more detail about that. But that is very damning, you guys. They started it. Why? If you felt like Hillary Clinton, I'm with her, if you felt like she was such a strong candidate, why would you even need to do that? And this is what pisses me off about the Democratic Party. This is why I left the Democratic Party. This is why I'm a registered independent. Because you guys can't let things play out. You can't let the American people decide what we think is best for us. You guys always got to cheat. You always have to go in behind the scenes and let me make sure something works out because let's help this candidate. You don't let the American people have a voice, but you're the ones that are arguing about us not having or losing our democracy. How do we have a real democracy when you're making decisions behind the scenes?